everybody.
Hi.
Oh, I'm zooming in and out. I'm zooming in and out. We are in Argentina. We had a couple of days to acclimate ourselves from the 9 million hours of flight. But we arrived, and with Argentina, we start tomorrow with the official schedule and workload.
Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires, we begin. And it's quite exciting because, people are very passionate here. And passion is a very, very good element of transcending something. You need passion to transform something. So I think in general with South Americans or Latin people in general, it's in their DNA to be very passionate about things, even if it's chaotic. But I prefer chaotic passion than, no passion. But it is an important ingredient in making things move and transform and break through in the end.
Especially for justice, because you have a lot of strikes right now.
Mm.
In US, we have the auto workers are striking, or General Motors, we have the actors striking.
Well, they have an agreement now.
And all writers do. Writers do, not the actors.
Right.
And then we have many other strikes coming all over the world. And we have people in various countries very close to revolting.
That's true. And that is very Plutonic. And I said it, and I'm going to say it before, Pluto will need time to establish himself. He's entering, of course, in a few months and stays for 20 years in this important place in Aquarius. And, as sad as it is, but, this world, this dimensional world will experience wars. It's already announced, conflicts,
But also weather. The
weather changes, of course, yes, of course.
And in a way, this is also the earth in her revolt, a way to balance things.
To some degree.
Or the Dark Mother.
But, we start soon, and, it's interesting because when we look into it, or when I can only talk about myself, when I look into upcoming tendencies and transits, there is always something in negative or seemingly negative, I don't get nervous about it. I don't think, oh my God, what's the point of, doing all this? I think it's important to, despite challenging transits, to stay on track, to stay in a certain field, because some people have to experience a certain war and some won't. I want to mention something that I read lately, and it's true. It's a story that was made into a movie, I believe, or a book, or both. And it is that two people, a couple, during World War II, hid in some completely remote area. Don't ask me about places, I lost the plot totally. But what stayed with me is that they hid. They lived completely secluded and didn't even realize that the war happened. And so, from my perspective, I would say that they have entered into a dimensional reality of their Earth. In our Earth, dimensional reality and timeline, there is no such thing as war. So they went into this hiding for whatever reason, or escaping, and didn't even experience what other people experienced, interesting enough. So I think it's interesting how we can control to some degree. I think actually to every degree, you can control what experience you want to experience, what experience you want to, have in your physical reality. And I call this usually a perfect agreement. Success is a perfect agreement. Health is a perfect agreement. Enlightenment is a perfect agreement, But in the story of Buddha and Jesus, for example, who all go through amazing perfect agreements, it goes through a lot of challenges, a lot of, negativity at part.
Well, in the myth of Christ, you have to suffer and you have to die.
Right.
on a cross.
Right. And they made a whole religion out of it.
And you have to be passive in that suffering.
Right.
And this somehow is redeeming humanity.
Well, the passive also means he is not yelling and screaming and complaining.
No.
He is in agreement with it. So he goes the path of the least resistance. See, and of course, it is a lot about compassion to say, I know that they don't know.
Mm.
And because I know that, I can stand beyond or above the experience I'm just making. So he avoids to tap, these stories is very much about avoiding to tap into a sense of what I call true evil. Many years ago in my Kabbalistic studies, I had a rabbi who always said to me, the source of true evil in this world is injustice. And of course, I was way too young to understand it, but where it went, basically, an explanation was that nothing is evil in its nature. It has to become, or, you know what I mean? It has to be forced to be evil. And usually it is a sense of injustice. That's why also we talk a lot about the story of Lilith, and that she is, of course, demonized, that she's evil and the mother of all demons. But she is, to some degree, in a form of legend, if you want, just to, don't make it, a fact. She is the first woman and the first witch and the first empowered feminine that defies authority. And the result is she's being demonized. She's evil now, you see. And so from that point, in my studies and in my teachings, I understood that evil comes through a source of injustice. We call women who take revenge on their cheating husbands bitches and witches and, piranhas and, God knows what we call them. So you see, but I do understand that a lot of what manifests as evil in this world is an agreement. There must be an agreement. Nothing, I think, can manifest in this world, in our dimensional world, is without an agreement. Well, there must be an agreement.
The evil makes a hero or a heroine a heroine.
A heroine, right.
Because we have something that we fight against. We fight against a certain injustice or something, versus the idea of breaking laws and then you have no luck. That's quite a big thing. We've talked about that before. What is good luck? What is bad luck? When do you feel that you convinced yourself you have bad luck because you've, usurped some sort of law, you've gone against your conscience or gone against something that you felt was right for you, and which precipitated bad luck. And it's something you feel. Now, when we talk about Lilith as a force that was pushed aside, always when you push aside one of the feminine, like in the Sleeping Beauty story, they invite these 12, they actually invite 13 women to come. They're the wise women of the kingdom for the baptism of Sleeping Beauty, and they only have 12 plates. So the 13th woman cannot come. So she's the one who does the revenge with a spindle, gets to hurt her, and they all fall asleep for 100 years because of her spell, because you excluded the feminine. And maybe that 13th wise woman is Lilith, really. Maybe she's the one, she represents the one who puts a spindle.
It's the feminine archetype that refuses to be inferior. It's a reaction to injustice, basically. But it's also interesting when we see in our more modern story how the Jews have been treated. The amount of evil that was present in that time, quite present, in connection to the incredible injustice that happened, and that also continued. In case some people don't understand, yes, the Jews, or prisoners of who survived the concentration camps survived, but the homosexual prisoners, by the way, They were sent right back to prison after their liberation because homosexuality was not legal, as if we need a law to legalize an emotion. But there is a huge deal of injustice that also creates what we see today very much in serial killings, for example, when we see these kids running around with guns, when we see adults, freaking out and just go blank and kill everybody around them. We call this evil, of course, but I wonder that evil is born out of an injustice in general. We were in New York, and there is a huge amount of Venezuelans who came, basically, and I don't know what they expected to happen and find, but they go through incredible challenges, of course, and as a result, they became a little, unruly, to say it like this. But it makes sense because their injustice doesn't begin in New York. It begins in their home country. It begins in their families. It begins with their religions. It begins with, it is the injustice of faith that they experience, that we all experience. Religion is not just.
That's a great betrayal.
It is a betrayal to our innate divine truth, which is that we can't do wrong and we are not wrong in our nature. But when a certain, the
feminine also goes dark, especially when she's neglected.
When she's hurt, absolutely.
Yes, when she's hurt, she always fights back.
That we call witches, you see, and witches need to be feared. Why? Because they are born from our ignorance. They're born from our injustice towards them, so to speak. The same happened with, what we see with black and white people at the moment. You see, a lot of white people turn into Karens. I love to watch these videos, and randomly people start to go to black folks and tell them, why do you live here? Do you live here? What are you doing here? Why are you standing? Why are you breathing? You see?
Incredible.
And it is
a projection of the shadow.
That's exactly what it is. It's a projection of the shadow, but it's also a projection of the fear. Now they're going to do to us what we did to them because they know it was unjust what happened to them.
It's a reparation.
Jane Elliott is I'm a huge fan of her, who did one of those behavioral experiments. You can find them on YouTube. Please look it up if you want an example of common sense in this world, where she is in an audience and she says, so every white person in this room, I want you to stand up if you want to be treated like a black person. No one stands up. And I think she says, okay, you didn't get the assignment here. One more time. Everybody who's white, stand up if you want to be treated like a black person. No one stood up. And she said, this proves that you are in full awareness. You know exactly what is going on. And I think that with injustice comes also guilt, to be guilt driven. And that drives us sometimes to reject a person completely. You see, because so much injustice has happened to gay people, and now gay people push back. You see, black people,
or they will.
Now they push back, or Mexicans, now they push back. So there is a lot of, oh my God, now they're going to do to us what we did to them. So there is awareness of the injustice, you see. But important is we need a bridge to cross this injustice, and that is compassion.
So do you think the DeSantis's of the world, or these Republicans now who are so hating of gay people as their political agenda in Russia, in Hungary, now in Italy, in so many different places, this backlash is even starting here in Argentina against gay people and their rights, and now we're going to go for them and transgender, and do you think on some level it is to mobilize people, that it is a way of once again saying, don't rest on your laurels, fight the injustice? We haven't really won half the battle, because in Uganda they can just shoot you.
Right.
So, and when you go into these archaic beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, against gay people or against, to us, it's archaic.
Right. Of course it is.
You know, and even Dianne Feinstein, she tried very, very hard, this
Mm-hmm.
senator in the US, to help gay people, whatever, but she also faltered on many facts. She was a deeply religious person.
Right.
And though she accepted gay people and fought for their rights, many times she didn't go all the way.
Mm.
You know, and she said, I made mistakes.
Right.
Though she was compassionate towards AIDS,
Right.
which devastated San Francisco.
Right.
So we are talking here about, are we being mobilized? Because we're always in political history, often the scapegoats. We're talking about Nazi Germany.
Mm.
I also want to discuss something else, that how can a person be possessed by a negative or evil entity?
Well, anything has to happen through agreement.
Right.
On some level, there is an agreement. I know this is something that, you know, we struggle to understand. Why would somebody write in his contract, I want to be at some point subjugated to let me use this term, possession, or a walk-in. Walk-ins were discussed in the 80s much more than now, by the way. And you know, I've seen real walk-ins basically, but again, you know, in some cases when I went and people said, can you help? And I couldn't help because there was no help needed. I think when something is in an agreement, it has to play out.
Well, in Nazi Germany, you have basically very fragmented kind of phantoms,
right,
made by human beings over centuries, that develop, become an egregore, become much stronger, and start to possess a great deal of Germany.
Absolutely, it happened.
And other countries.
That's why not Germany, Nazi Germany.
Nazi Germany.
Is a very specific
time,
exactly. And look how occult it is. It's completely occult. It's all about, you know,
the distortion
mechanisms, the distortion of runes, the distortion of artifacts.
Extraterrestrial understanding.
Exactly.
Channeling.
Exactly. So interesting enough, they all were right on track, but in the wrong direction. But again, it's almost like when people say, I've been abducted by aliens. Why you from 8 billion people and not somebody else? Because you had an agreement. You had an agreement. People who are being abducted by aliens are DNA donors. There is an agreement. That's the whole point, is they make an agreement for whatever reason, because maybe they've experienced that world or they experienced that future. And they say, well, if you guys need DNA to maintain your life force or maintain your society or survive, feel free, come pick me up. I probably will become, you know, a nutcase because I can't understand it, but use my DNA because that DNA is informed with the agreement. Not every DNA is informed with agreements. Not we all are abducted by aliens, okay? Which doesn't exist, of course. It's not aliens, it's us in the future who ruin our world. And in some dimensional world, the planet is so fucked up, basically, that they don't recreate anymore. So they need our DNA to sustain themselves. That's what abduction is. But again, it's in agreement. And the people who get, look, in voodoo, the priest or the priestess who is worth her money and soul and reputation, needs to be possessed. So when a priest in a ritual is not being possessed, the congregation looks down on them. It's like something's wrong with her or something's wrong with him. So in this case, in voodoo, and I asked specifically because we went to New Orleans and I asked a couple of people and said, you know, it's a really bad sign if no one comes and possesses the high priest or anyone for that matter in the congregation, right? It's like, wow, it's almost a rejection, so to speak. So, but
there's
again,
positive possession, there's negative
possession, exactly. And I think negative possession is something where the agreement is not clear.
Do you think that Hitler was asking for the possession? Or did he have a weak ego?
I think that he asked for possession. You know, because it's somebody, when I look at him, who deliberately wanted to open doors because he was a, 5 foot tall man with, a tiny mustache You know,
You remember?
let me say this, not a charismatic, where you say, my God, look at him. Nothing. He was a short little man, basically, who I feel we would say in traditional form sold his soul, which is impossible, of course. But I think he found a methodology to somehow make an agreement, a pact, we would call it today, and say, come in, make me powerful, and I will open doors for all of you.
Do you know who that spirit is, or who
No, and I don't care about it, because that would be also the thing is, it would be impossible, because the spirit that caused it, by defeat, Hitler dies. I mean, one way or another, shot himself or escaped to Argentina, basically.
Or
but the
Brazil,
thing is,
Brazil.
or Brazil, he's dead. The moment he dies, the spirit dissolves. Yeah, the spirit dissolves. And for me, the Nazis is an occult group, not a political group. Everything they did, the whole movement, everything was an orchestrated form. But the people who connected to this and went with it were in agreement. The agreement is in our soul contracts.
Right. So the soul contract then is the first agreement.
Right.
Before we incarnate, we write a contract.
Absolutely.
And that's very detailed. It's quite detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And our lives unfold from that contract. And we can also go off it.
Agreements are options.
Right.
Okay. It's like a clause. It's not the contract.
No.
But agreements are, let's say, chapter 1, first 10 years. And then there are sub-agreements. And say, you know what, if it's possible to become the Queen of England by marriage, or, because everybody drops dead, I'm open for it. So we're open to possibilities.
Right. And then we're born and the subconscious mind comes in.
Right.
So now we're affected by past lives and other, pullings from our ancestry, other things
Past
that
lives.
then also interfere at times or support our agreements.
Right.
We have to evolve then.
Without conscious evolution, no agreements.
So we have to grow, and our dreams try to keep us in the contract and keep us within a certain understanding.
You say dreams. For me, it's less dreaming and it's much more the layers of consciousness.
Yes.
In other words, the beta mind waves are the agreement of the soul contract, because here I am, in a certain form and frame. The alpha waves, theta waves, delta waves are all various agreements in refinement, so to speak. In other words, in delta, an agreement will be most difficult, most transformative, most challenging, also sometimes good and bad. But the experience is, if the mind of the soul says, I don't have a big chance here in this incarnation to make it or to not screw it up again, then I add a certain agreement, just in case I don't make it, a certain agreement that forces me to experience something. And that's why we have sometimes people who lose their legs, get bombed up, get burnt, fall into a pit.
But then the subconscious
are eaten by that. It's the agreement, and the agreement is just another insurance to make sure that we stay on a purpose, because the perfect agreement is the fulfillment of your purpose,
which you create out of the life contract.
It's created through every experience you had on every dimensional form. Again, we have to stop thinking in time. We have to stop thinking in time. So the thing is, even if it sounds like I would never agree to this, I can guarantee you everything you've done, you agreed to it. But the agreements are just side notes. They're not the contract.
So let's say a woman put into her contract that she's not going to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And then she turns 41, 42, 43, 44.
Now I want them.
Now I want children.
Right. So the subtext of that agreement is, I might rethink that. And I wonder if at 45, 50, 52, I have one option to activate the agreement of having a child. That's all it is, which your friend did. you know, amazing
in
lady.
her 50s.
And she did it with 52, and she knew how to do it, but physically it was almost, I don't want to say impossible, but she knew how to do it because she's very good in homeopathy and everything. You know, and that is now 11. Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is that I have somebody look like me. My house of marriage is completely empty because I said in my contract, I don't think that I want to be distracted by relationships. And the 2, 3 I had were important, you know, was distractions. So, but there is a agreement in that level. And each astrologic house has about 2 or 3 agreements. And in these agreements, I said, just in case I meet somebody who's really perfect for me, then I go and marriage. So every astrologer says you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, I'm married to you for 20 plus years now. So, but again, it was not in my original contract. See, I didn't have kids in my contract. I didn't have this in my contract. That's it.
So you changed the agreement.
So I activated the agreement. I don't change. I activate the agreements of possibility. In case the restaurant that I want to go to doesn't have the pasta it's famous for, they have other options. One option is the agreement to eat the pizza. One is to eat the cake, and one is to eat the bruschetta. Otherwise, I would say, well, they don't have the pasta I wanted, so I'm leaving. But maybe I can agree to something else in order to have the experience of the ambience of the
So let's say somebody has closed down their psychic abilities in a past life because they saw, you know, the deaths of people, or they saw the darkness in people or whatever, and they asked very specifically, I shut down my third eye. And now in this life, you know, they can't do a shamanic journey. It's always black. They're always inhibited. They can't open up their psychic gift, and they keep wanting to. So they have to end the old agreement.
Again, there is no ending. This is a choice. The agreement is very often positive. It's a pro aspect. In case I don't get it in my main line, let me make it in my second, third, and fourth line. That's the idea. In other words, when somebody says, you know,
I don't want to open my
third eye, and then, damn, I really want to open everything. Look, you can't open or close a chakra. Don't be stupid. It's always active, or if it's not, you're dead. But the idea is, suddenly at 40, at 50, they say, I feel I want to be a healer. Well, for healing, you need to activate your chakras. You know, activate, not open. Activate them. You know, in alignment. And there is a layer of agreement. So at that point, you have a chance to activate an agreement, to evoke, to summon an agreement. Yeah, that's the idea. The agreements can be looked at in
and they start development. They start to work towards the development of it.
Well, that's the idea.
Yes.
That's the idea. But we all have in our contracts agreements of possibility. We call these chokmah agreements. Possibilities, not a guarantee that I'm going to do it, but you know, a chance to do it.
Well, some people agreed not to become rich because they have whatever belief systems about being rich, or it would,
and then they want to change
them
it.
spiritually,
and then they want to change it, and you can tell because they say, I want to get out of this poverty, but I don't need $1 million. Well, what do you think rich means? You know, you see, again, it sounds so simple, but people say, oh my God, yeah, it's true. I mean, what do you think rich means? So when people say, well, rich means for me $500 more a month, the mind doesn't work this way. The mind doesn't work. The mind says times 5,000, that is rich. See? So there has to be a clear also understanding what we mean with what we want, what meaning we have.
Then there's Don Miguel Ruiz, who talks about the 4 agreements. And then he talks about, you know, don't take anything personal. things like that. And they're all positive agreements that we decide as people and as a society, a shamanic culture, to agree upon for a better life, for a shamanic life.
Well, we call agreements also democracy. Democracy is based on, people should read Plato's Republic. It's a, these days especially, because we have almost, I don't want to say abandoned democratic values now, but, everybody's so entitled for their own little piece of cheese that we don't see the necessity to share and be there for each other.
Well, that Putin wants to take over land, saying that was once part of us, Ukraine or Chechnya or whatever, and now you have Azerbaijan doing the same thing to, the country next to it because they want to get to Turkey. So you have this problem again of invasion. Once one person does it, somebody else wants to see if they can do it, and
that's what it is.
And that is also causing a chain reaction that could go very wrong.
That is Pluto. That is Pluto who brings to the surface any kind of repressed frustrations. See what I mean? That's the idea. Let me just say something very controversial, but I hope it comes across right. We have to stop. The world will get better. Actually, it will get really great. The moment we stop having women's rights, gay rights, immigrant rights, we have to stop all that. It's human rights. As long as we separate the rights in genders, reasons, motivation, we're going to be screwed. I don't need gay rights. I'm a human being. I don't need anyone to agree with me what I do or not I do. I don't need extra permission to marry you or divorce you or live with you. But we make it the gay marriage. It's the straight marriage. It's the, now it is the religious right to refuse
abortion,
service to a gay person, or,
which is a prejudice, it's not just against your religious beliefs. It's actually quite a scapegoating of gay people.
Of course it is. But you see, I think that what happened is a backlash to that fight for gay rights, for example, or women's rights. Women have been fighting for, the last 100 years for their rights. In US, especially, they're being taken away one by one. And it is amazing how many conservative women are totally for it. I mean, you ask them, do you still want to vote? You want to be able to vote, or, it's really fascinating. But it comes from that point of
to me, it's something primitive and archaic that wells up.
Well, of course, it's primitive. But what I want to say is that we have managed to segregate rights and reasons in women's rights. Hillary Clinton said it right. Women's rights are human rights, women's rights. So don't call it women's rights. It's just human rights, period. That's all it is. Let's take the sexual context out. Let's take the spiritual context out, and we're all going to be in a much better place. You see, that is the idea, basically. So these, as I call them, so these agreements are very important to, these agreements have to be evaluated, if you want, and they're going to be evaluated from a spiritual point. The oversouls will reevaluate the agreements. And that's why when we read stories about God punishing the planet, destroying the world and so on, it's because, and there's no other way, God is in resistance to his own agreements. I'll give you a world, I give you freedom, I give you free power until I change my mind and disagree with the agreement. So here is your flawed divinity, so to speak, right? And therefore that all trickled down basically to us believing that we are imperfect. And that, as I said today in our in an interview with Marcella in Argentina, is that the biggest manipulation and brainwashing is that we are these incredibly complex human beings that need a lot of therapy and a lot of medication and a lot of guidance. And this is totally nonsense. Because since I see people from a working point, right, all I see is people who want to love, who want to drink, eat, sleep, be in peace, who want compassion, and who want kindness. It's really basic. It's not very complicated. You know, it is our agreement with others that say, isn't it difficult to be human? Isn't it difficult to live with Black people? Isn't it difficult to be with gay people? Isn't it difficult? And so then when they eradicate the difficulty, then they go for each other. Then they kill each other, basically, you know. That's why I was hoping for the rapture. It was just, you know, I thought, I hope the rapture happens, because finally all these crazy fanatics will be gone. We would be in a much better place, you know. But again, Jesus didn't show up. So back to the beginning, how embarrassing. You understand? You have to look at this point, because, you know, I take spiritual people and people of faith very serious, because they're anchoring a lot of their action, reaction, the thinking and their choices on the power of their belief. But if their belief refuses to agree with the world and only says, check the boxes that apply to you and nothing else, I'm sorry, you have a problem. You have a problem, you see.
Do you think that many Republican politicians are lacking in compassion? I mean, we know many Democrats have, or
I think
screaming liberals.
In the US, for the people who listen to us globally, in the US we have only two parties, which is Democratic and Republican.
True.
And the Republicans are just very afraid of progress. That's all. It's very afraid of progress. That's why the policies are all
reactionary.
50s, in the 60s, you know, either they didn't check yet that it's 2023, 24 almost, but they're
the psyche can't keep up.
Their answer to everything is strip every right of everyone, have the most control over it, and then there is no chaos. You know, meanwhile, people losing their children to gun violence left and right. You know, you have to wonder. You have to wonder, maybe we need another flood or apocalypse or something, you know.
Then you have spirits who get quite upset because they're the spirits of the land, spirits of different caves, spirits that take over, you know, minerals. And when you're over mining, when you're taking so much out of the earth, when you're imbalancing weather, when something is happening in the sun at the same time.
As we have agreements, so has the earth agreements. And the earth has agreed to it. Please come, find the beauty, find, discover, use, don't screw it up. Exactly. Yes, because, you know, a female source that offers power and life force will refuse it when it's just taken out of greed.
And that is what's happened already.
Oh, yes.
And that's affecting the weather.
Oh, yes.
And so the Native Americans are truly right.
Absolutely.
And indigenous people all over the earth.
They knew it. They knew it. And they say, you know, they're going to be the ones who say, told you so. You know, because they had this agreement in their doctrine, in their belief system. And they said, well, we don't know, we're not going to change it. You know, so they're not, interesting enough, these older ancestries that have survived into our time have not changed their, like, exactly, the core belief, like in Muslims, fantastic. In Islam, you pray 5 times. One reason 5 times, you don't do stupid things if you have to pray 5 times, you know, and you wash your hands.
Time for anything.
You have no time to be stupid, and you wash your hands and your feet. That's already a success for me. But if we look at Islam, and I read the Quran, it is very much a be kind, be friendly, be nice. And when I meet, I only speak of experience, when I met in my life Arab people, Muslims, and so on. The only thing that was missing is that they didn't adopt me. It's in their very nature. It's in their core belief. Absolutely. Absolutely. The most generous people you can imagine, So it is in their nature. Please eat, please sleep here, drink. You say, I don't need anything. They're offended. But look at their belief system. It is in its core. Islam is a religion of kindness.
So when people
the rest of interpretation, what's happening, that's a different story.
So when people become too patriarchal, too male directed, too imbalanced when it comes to the feminine, then they are warmongering. Then they are more the brutalist Western.
Right.
But we also have it in the East, in Mao Zedong.
Everywhere, of course. Yeah.
So it's prevalent all over the planet.
But it can happen to male and female. That's why I think that the next period in our existence, the next 20 years, will question if male and female, I want to say if they're necessary. I'm going to say it this way. We have now an interesting group of people who brought up the subject of non-binary. It's something you can chew on, and it's quite not digestible sometimes because we are so trained to be binary, to be male or female. But the idea is interesting enough, and that's how I approach it, is people come and say, okay, listen, I'm not non-binary at this point. That's it. And to me, it makes sense because we're going into a society where it's not going to make a big difference if you're male or female, or rich or poor, or white or black, or big or small. It's going to be important what you can contribute to the collective. That's where it's going. That's where it's going. That's why I like all these alien destruction movies, because when the shit hits the fan, the world comes together and now they have to fight together against the common enemy. These are agreements. When can we come together? When there is a meteor flying towards us, an asteroid that could wipe us out again, or a revelation, something, exactly, you see. But that's why these are agreements, global agreements. And I think that our job today is to allow people to wake up to their collective agreement. We are here to create a better world. And I said this to you, and you asked me the other day. It looks like everybody's crazy right now, but the idea is that the majority of consciousness of people on this planet are on track. They are on track. I know it doesn't look it this way, but they are on track. But the small majority makes so much noise. We all are like, who is that barking dog over there? You see, so we're losing our focus because we're looking at a bunch of idiots basically who feel entitled to not evolve.
So I'd like to go back to Hitler as an example. Here we have an entity whom he invites in, probably through a ritual, something he read, whatever, and he allows it into him. Now, at the same time, he convinces many, many other people to also do rituals.
And that is
the SS.
And that is the deal between Hitler and the being. The being says, bring me people. So he's recruiting.
And then he hypnotizes the people on some level.
Well, he received the power of magnetism.
And then the people started to follow en masse.
Exactly.
And the people who were more healthy, who actually were more in balance, did not follow Hitler. And they suffered during that period. They helped other people, but they suffered greatly.
Well, many stories, right?
In the end, everybody suffered, but that is something else.
In the end, everybody suffered, exactly.
But in the beginning, not so.
Right. But we have many examples of this. It's not just Hitler. We have many examples of this. People have been, and you know more than me, people in these levels of power are obsessed with the occult.
And we know that in Germany, they were certainly reading Goethe at the time. They were reading Faust and his deal with Mephistopheles. And this influenced Hitler and many other people. Look at
both
positively or negatively, right?
Right. It was a revival, a renaissance of the occult, but the way it went to, and Germany had, of course, a huge tradition of the rune masters and the return to the runes and to the Nordic traditions. But again, like today in polytheism in Greece and in many other religions. The problem is there's always a little bit of nationalism attached to it. You can't avoid it. And then suddenly you hear nonsense like Greeks only for Greece, Greece only for Greeks, and America only for Americans. And, it's this.
Usually from first generation
Germans,
immigrants.
And Germans, yeah, crazy. And Germans have to be all blue-eyed, tall, and blonde. I'm telling you, it is, that's the problem, is that in a non-guided, non-balanced, non-healed agreement will get so distorted that suddenly you think, no, I have to be blonde and blue-eyed to be accepted by the gods, or any of that.
Well,
So we have to separate politics. Unfortunately, it's embedded now in our system, simply also because the church and religion is involved in politics, which it shouldn't. It's not the field.
so if the Earth can sustain 10 billion people, and we're already at 9 billion, and we only have 1 billion more to go, which could happen very quickly, then nature usually does a backlash and says, now we have to.
COVID was a warning.
We have to also
In 10 years,
keep it at 10 billion.
Either in 10 years, we're going to have a paradise, or we're going to have an epidemic that will, where COVID was like a little sneeze,
And people feel that inevitably, that the planet sustains a certain amount of people.
Right.
We haven't reached that goal yet.
Not only people, but it sustains a certain amount of mind
Yes.
quality, a certain amount of mind quality. Yeah.
When it's too self-destructive, too destructive to the planet, too destructive to each
Then
other.
the agreement is with the people, if you all flip out and turn on me, the agreement is I'm going to get rid of you.
Yes. Which has happened before.
And people say, okay, I don't think it's going to come to that. But look how often we've come to that point. Look how often we've come to that point. And, remember the Georgia Guidestones? That was the first rule, I think, or law on it.
500,000.
Keep it under 500.
500 million, sorry.
But that's a little crazy, 500 million. But I'm telling you, there is a certain thought to it, because we cannot just live our own lives in our own little glass boxes, and
Which is the way it is now.
it is now. We all live in little glass boxes, and we see each other, but we're not on the same dimensional timeline. So we all are alone, floating in our own vision, so to speak. I cannot say it's wrong or bad, because that's how nature works, basically. But I think it's important when we come together for a certain experience. And I said it today, I think the biggest illness today we have is that people have no desire anymore. They have desire to get something, not to be. They want to get the million. They want to get the lottery. They want to get the new car. They want to get their boyfriend. They want to get, but they don't want to be it. And without joy and desire, you can, bury yourself, basically, stay at home with a blanket over your head. You have to awaken joy before you expect it to show up. You have to develop joy. Joy is the main key. I always say in the emotional scale, you should not drop under positive expectation. Once you drop under, it's pretty much cuckoo, You should stay in this positive expectation and above, hopefulness and so on, joy, love, of course, wisdom, knowledge, enthusiasm is an important emotion. It's a choice to stay, not an act. People say it's so difficult to be joyful. It's not being, it's choosing it.
Now, going back to the original Lilith, because here's somebody who is given, this marriage. She is the first enlightened woman. She's the first realized woman.
Empowered.
And she is supposed to marry Adam. And she refuses
she is the wife of Adam.
Yes.
She is the wife
but
of
she
Adam.
refused to be subjugated to,
Right.
to be underneath him.
Right.
Not to be treated as an equal.
Right.
And this is the very beginning ancestors.
Right.
And they are enlightened.
Right.
So,
and it's also a story that has been weaved throughout centuries to all the women. Look what happens to you when you don't obey. You see, it's a stark warning. It's a story written as a warning to basically don't think that you're something better, because see what happens? You're becoming the mother of all demons. You know, the source of all evil. The church to this day says it. You know, I mean, I love it when women go to the Vatican to, you know, hope for the new pope, and the white smoke comes and they're all cheering. I'm like, and I can't help but think this sentence I heard, only the dumbest sheep will choose their own butcher. And then my guide says, it's also an agreement.
But when you allow...
And we have to, let me just say this, please. We have to, as hard as it is sometimes, we have to allow people to experience their agreements, even if we think they shouldn't.
But when we allow Lilith, for instance, to come into us and to possess us, she gets angry. It's a healing, it's a transformation, but it's full of anger.
Well, Lilith says, stop calling me to do your dirty laundry. Do it yourself. She is not the maid. She is not the maid. Her fury is not against something. It's simply for, why you're calling me? What do you want from me? You have the power to do it. I had the power to do it. Why you're calling me? What do you want with me? See, and the angry feminine, you know, has transformed, by the way, into the angry black woman, right? Has turned into that. When a woman, especially when a black woman is a little loud, she's angry, maybe she's just in her power, you know, and she says, stop asking me for water, wine, and sandwiches. Go make it yourself. And that's what Lilith stands for. You see, she stands for this. Why should I do the job? Why should I be the only one? Where is the agreement between me and Adam? Where is the agreement between me and the divine?
It's a betrayal.
It's a betrayal. And this is the original agreement of betrayal. And
so then she sleeps with an archangel. She sleeps with an angel.
Well, we don't know that, but
that's the
let's
story.
Assume.
And she creates a new race of human beings, which are part divine, certainly, and part...
But that's why the church also calls it, we are born with the original sin.
And those original beings are from the Nephilim.
There's a reference to it.
Because she's sleeping with an angel.
No.
And only Lilith, in her wisdom, truly begins this whole story and creates another race of people that are, in fact, very psychic, quite aware, and the birth of witches, the birth of shamans, the birth of spiritual people. Many people believe she is the origin of wise people.
To some degree, isn't it? Definitely.
And that's the real hidden history that often shows up in dreams, that often shows up in fairy tales.
Fairy
that have
tales,
been
for sure.
often misinterpreted by Jungians and different kinds of people because they don't really know the original stories.
Well, there is no original story. You know, we have to stop with the idea of original story. It's a story. In Kabbalah, we begin the first Genesis with at a beginning, not the beginning. So again, I think we're doing ourselves a great disservice with looking for a original story like there was a beginning. There wasn't a beginning. There is a continuity of development of Earths. You know what I mean?
Many beginnings.
Many beginnings. And I think that infiniteness, is that a good word?
Infinity.
Infinity is something that we haven't explored enough because we think of beginning and end, you know, and so we often go to the beginning, the origin. There is no origin, you know, in that sense.
So you're saying in this world, Lilith went through that, but in a different Earth, she may have had a very different existence.
Absolutely. And in a different Earth, she had a completely different experience. Every consciousness, physical or not, chooses an infinite amount of simultaneous experiences from which we can draw.
Into infinity.
Into infinity.
So the woman who in this life said she didn't want to have children, she has another self which has children.
Probably a football team. Right. Absolutely.
Because there are many timelines.
There's many.
All existing simultaneously.
Simultaneously, exactly.
And if you come in close contact with one of those timelines, is that a form of balancing yourself? To realize that in some level...
If you look at the Egyptian form, if you look at the Egyptian perspective of science, that everything is connected through strings, music strings. That when you play a certain melody, or harmonize a certain melody, that you bring all these existence in total alignment with each other. You have to find out the song of your soul that connects the melody of all simultaneous experiences. Now, don't ask me how to do this because I don't know.
Well, it's the shaman song. It's the song in your soul.
But we have,
part of the journeys.
Again, we're looking at our various traditions, and we find a lot about music, song, healing, well, and so on and so on. That's what it is.
But you have to sing your song for sure.
Well, to do some shameless advertisement,
frequency.
Please check my new album. It's something I wanted to record because of what we're talking about. It is about something, something is called spiritual music, or we separate things, right? In spiritual music, new age music, healing music, but all music really is healing. All music is healing. If it moves us, it's healing. And so I made this album based on a orchestral composition. It's a lot of orchestrated arrangements, because some of our classical pieces, Beethoven especially, and Mozart, Bach especially, they have certain pieces within the compositions which are absolute alignments of oversoul and body and interdimensional experiences. They just do that. It's little pieces of snippets of music, but these little snippets, they do that. And that's what I try to do with this album, is to bring an orchestral wave of alignment and layers of instruments together to create that kind of perfect alignment. It's very moving music.
That's what I try to do in my shamanic journey.
That's the idea.
Also, to find the original song.
Again, and that is the idea. And I think once we tap into our individual composition, all the strings, string theory, all the strings align in one piece, and you have a complete entrance, not only agreeing, but being in that perfect agreement for a brief moment. But once you enter the perfect agreement, you never leave it. You never leave it. And then the next adventure begins, whatever that adventure is, of course, you see.
Well, in India, there's the Nada Brahma.
There's many
interpretations. Or
Egyptians had it, of course. In Babylonian, they had it. Sumerian, they had it. Absolutely, yeah.
Gurdjieff.
Yeah, Gurdjieff, exactly. So the concept is not new. It's really not new. It's been, peeled like an onion, piece by piece by piece, until we come to the core. That's the idea. It's quite exciting. It's quite exciting.
Well, once you have a realization of all these dimensions coming together, all your different lives, past and future, coming together, you reach that agreement, but that connects you again to your oversoul. So the song is in essence a connection to the oversoul, a kind of alignment.
It's almost like it reminds me a little bit like, help me with this Steven Spielberg movie with the UFO and the music.
Close Encounters of the
Close Encounters. They have to figure out the melody
to communicate.
And once they understood the melody is the alignment to the agreement. Once you get that melody, we agree to come down and give you back the people we have abducted. Of course, for these people, they come out, they're all still in their own timeline. You see, which again proves an idea from a film point, of course, in fantasy, but it says once you are in a space, let's call it a UFO, a space which doesn't interact in time, you're completely liberated from time, because they come out of the UFO in their World War II uniforms. Somebody looks like Victorian, somebody looks like ancient, and they say, what time is it? Where are we? See? So I think that the biggest enemy of our time is time. We've been so trained to believe in time that, it limits a lot. If you can't do it in this lifetime, you do it in another lifetime. That's, there is no
Because you have other timelines affecting this timeline.
Exactly. And if your timeline doesn't make it, it doesn't mean that 5 other timelines make it. So you will make it either way. Whatever the contract agreement is, you will make it. If you don't make it, your other selves will make it. In the infinite possibility, why is it given? Because the universe wants to make sure that you make it, whatever that means for you individually. But that is where it goes.
Then there were some people who met extraterrestrials and they were actually future people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
In spaceships that were created probably in the 1950s, 40s, 30s.
It's called reverse engineering.
Right. And then they showed up in our timeline.
Right, exactly. Which I believed much, much more, by the way, instead of, wrapping my mind around the fact that aliens have managed to cross the immense vastness of the universe. I mean, it's vast. It's vast. Okay. I don't think anything can exist that long in any shape or form with cryo chambers and so on to fly around for like, I don't know, 1 billion years just to get somewhere. And it still wouldn't get anywhere. It's really about bending space, or what we call the time-space continuum. And once you can bend this, I think there's more than enough evidence.
Warp space. Yeah.
Warm space and so on. And again, if you look how quickly our technology evolved in the last 50 years, I mean, my iPhone has more power than the first module that landed on the moon. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm afraid, we are in this beautiful apartment here in this old building in Buenos Aires, and the elevator is a mechanism which I feel it will snap and kill somebody one day. Because when it starts or stops, it does it with such a force. You need a crash helmet, I mean, you have whiplash just stopping. So, I'm just saying we have made huge strides, but in the next 20 years with Pluto in full force in Aquarius, we will have ways to interstellar travel. We will have an understanding, maybe even be able to see the flaws in the Einstein relativity theory, and we'll go way beyond that. We're going to open doors in medicine, in science, but we also have to open doors in society, because if our society goes to crap, it doesn't matter what we're evolving into.
Because we must improve life here. We came here to make a better world.
Make a better world.
No matter what. Through new technologies, through everything.
And the problem is, we are the world.
Yes.
We are the world. It's like when you want to change, you think, I'm going to move now. We had some people said, we're going to move to Europe because the US is so crazy. We're going to move to Europe. I said, the problem is you're going to take yourself with you, wherever you go. That's the one problem in my plan, So we are the world. We are the world. And
this is a manifestation of us and what's going on.
That's exactly what it is,
All together.
All together.
But many of us came here to raise consciousness.
Absolutely.
We came with a very different consciousness, you and I, exactly the opposite of our families.
And many of us.
We were ecologists. We were people who loved the earth.
And thank God we're not the only ones. We're not the only ones. Many, many people managed to do this, and we're in good company. We wanted to give you a little bit of our Argentinian input here, because, we got so inspired, and,
the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly, and we'll see where things will go. Please check out our Vimeos, because we have 60 plus now. Check my mental odyssey, please.
Please, that's the most important.
That's the most important. If you're a new beginner, if you've never done anything, do that.
Start that.
Do
it's
that.
Called Mental Odyssey on Vimeo.
That's what it is. And check out my music, please. And
the shamanic journey.
And share, like, and describe. Share, like, and describe. Right? That's the big mantra. So share, like, and describe.
So then we will continue these podcasts.
Absolutely.
Only if you do share, like,
and describe, because otherwise, not describe, subscribe. Here we go. I'm drunk. I'm already in a different dimension. Because we need your support to know if we should continue doing this. I know we want it to be much more much more regular in all of this. The problem is life happens, and like it happens for you, and so maybe it takes a little bit time for us to upload a new podcast from time to time, but I hope that when we do, you enjoy it and you take inspiration from it and you like it and you can agree with it or not, because that doesn't matter really.
Can I say my last comment?
Sure.
So, back to the idea of the Nazis.
Oh, God.
Here, Hitler makes an agreement with darkness, with a dark entity. And in that affects the entire world. And it only has a certain time period. It got defeated in the end by, in essence, people who are both balanced between light and dark, who choose light, who wanted to guard this planet. Now, when a person gets too lost in a darkness, when they go into an agreement with a darkness, how will that affect the world? Because some people are already in this world. A minority, but
it will show. We don't need to guess it. It will show how it will manifest.
We feel it. We all feel it.
We feel it. But again, let's not be pessimistic. Let's not be pessimistic, because we can't change these realities for other people. We have to make sure that we stay and evolve in our own reality.
Because some people accept both light and dark and work within it towards maturity.
Yeah, then you go beyond.
And
then you go beyond. If you don't need anymore to be light or dark or positive or negative, then you go beyond.
And that's the goal.
That's the goal. Thank you, guys. Anything to say again? Let's finish before he starts again with something new.
The perfect agreement.
The perfect agreement. So agree with something that agrees truly with your soul, and stay with that first agreement. And what is your first agreement? With that, we want to leave you, and we hope you're okay. We're good. You're good.
Write your own agreements.
Yes. And be well and be a blessing. And until we meet again, share, like, subscribe. Bye.